So with the fallout of Dragon Ball Super Episode 66, I can confidently say that Super Episode 66 is the most talked about Dragon Ball Super episode we've ever seen since the inception of the series in July of 2015. Literally everybody's been talking about it. Literally everybody has been sharing their opinions on the episode. And because there was so much to talk about, I'm planning a series of videos this week discussing and deconstructing this episode and the different aspects behind it. This is not going to take away from all the other content that I already had planned to upload this week, like my Xenoverse 2 playthroughs and a few other videos I had planned, but it's just going to be bonus content for you all to enjoy and to hopefully relieve any stress you might be going through in your personal life, because I know a lot of people have had a lot of stress lately in their lives. I'm here to at least try to relieve it as best I can by entertaining you. And on this video, I want to talk about one of the things I've seen brought up time and time again, and that is the retcons that Dragon Ball Super Episode 66 provided. I think people are a little confused about certain things, so I wanted to really dig deep into this topic and analyze it. There have been a plethora of people talking about this, and a lot of them aren't really sure what a retcon is. They're confused about what that term actually means. So on this video, we'll discuss that, plus the implications of what was introduced to us in Dragon Ball Super 66 after this.
I've come back from the future to warn you that if you don't subscribe to Geekdom 101, your future is grim.
So the first thing I want to discuss here to make things very, very clear is the differences between what a plot hole is and what a retcon is. A plot hole is just something that doesn't really make any sense with the narrative that's being told to us. A plot hole is something that directly contradicts lore that was told to us prior with no explanation or no attempt to even try to fix it. A retcon, the word retcon is short for retroactive continuity. This is basically the series or the story trying to change what was previously identified as being actual lore during the narrative to make it fit with the story they're currently telling. So it's one of those things where a retcon can kind of be created from a plot hole, but they are not the same thing necessarily. When you look at the actual definition of a retcon, it's basically something that's applied to fictional work as somewhat of a revision. It's basically a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events, typically used to facilitate a dramatic plot shift or an account for an inconsistency. In other words, a plot hole is just a hole in the story that makes no sense. A retcon tries to make sense of that hole without actually totally contradicting something. Dragon Ball is filled with retcons. This is something that's nothing new, not just to Dragon Ball fans, but also all comic book fans. Marvel and DC for years have done constant retcons and reboots of their franchise, to the point where it's even hard to keep track of it sometimes. Dragon Ball's no different. Akira Toriyama, much like George Lucas with Star Wars, is one of the undisputed kings of retcons. And retcons in Dragon Ball are something that, depending on who you are and how you view the series, can bother you, but for others, they really don't care. A good example of a retcon early in Dragon Ball Z is the character of Vegeta. When we first meet Vegeta and Nappa, their intentions are to summon the dragon to become immortal so they can fight forever, and we never get any evidence whatsoever of him being a quote Saiyan prince in the original manga. He's just a Saiyan super elite. Moving forward with the story, when we get to the Namek arc, we are then introduced to Frieza, and that is retroactive continuity, because now Vegeta's ambition to become immortal is not to fight forever, but more so to fight and revolt against Frieza, especially when he finds out that planet Vegeta was destroyed by Frieza, which again, that in and of itself is a retcon, because the narrative originally told us that the planet was destroyed due to some kind of meteor or something, and later that was retconned to it being Frieza's doing. Same thing with Vegeta being a prince. He was never a prince in the original manga as it was coming out. That was a retcon. Now, does that retcon contradict the original story? I think that one's passable, because it could be one of those things where Vegeta and Nappa had two different motives and they just didn't want to talk about Frieza, so that one doesn't bother me too much. Another more recent example of a retcon is in the Majin Buu saga. If you watch the Majin Buu saga, and I'm just giving you some examples. There's literally tons and tons and tons of examples in Dragon Ball. I'm just throwing a couple that are popping in my head as I record this. The creation of Majin Buu. In the original manga and in the anime, it's stated to us several times that Bibidi created Majin Buu. But in a recent interview with Toriyama a couple years ago, he changed that narrative completely to Majin Buu existing since the beginning of time, and Bibidi conjured him up. This is a retcon. Is it a good retcon? In my opinion, no. So retcons are really one of those things where it's in the eye of the beholder. In fact, there's not a doubt in my mind that the biggest retcon in the history of Dragon Ball is the reveal that Goku is an alien. When Toriyama was first writing Dragon Ball, Goku was never intended to be a Saiyan. That wasn't even anywhere close to being in his head. Goku was basically a knockoff of Sun Wukong from Journey to the West, a monkey boy who had extraordinary powers. Later on, as the series progressed, there were hints here and there of Goku possibly not being human from characters such as Bulma, Piccolo, and in one instance, Sergeant Metallic when he read Goku as being an alien. These were small, little, tiny hints that Toriyama may have had the idea in his head, but at least there was some foreshadowing there. We didn't get the reveal until deep into the series, because if you know about Dragon Ball, you know that Dragon Ball did not start with Raditz. There's a whole story before Raditz, but that's a rant for another video. But I digress. Goku being revealed to be a Saiyan literally changed the entire fabric of the series and the entire mythology behind the character of Goku, as well as Piccolo being revealed to be an alien too. But I think Goku's was more impactful because if you notice, once Goku was revealed to be a Saiyan, the entire story of Dragon Ball revolved around the Saiyans. It was Goku versus Vegeta and Nappa, the Saiyans. Frieza killed the Saiyans. Cell had the blood of Saiyans. In the Buu saga, all the side characters are forgotten about for Goten and Trunks, the Saiyan prodigies. Even into GT, Baby had beef with the Saiyans. The entire story all became about Goku's heritage, which wasn't the case at all if you focus on the original Dragon Ball manga, the original story, prior to Raditz showing up. Now, is this a good retcon? In my opinion, yes, because it does have a little bit of foreshadowing. It explains things prior to the event actually happening, and it also ended up creating an incredible amount of world building and lore building. The series really could not progress the way it did without this retcon being introduced, because then it introduced the idea of space travel and beings that are beyond just what was on Earth. And obviously, the hints of Goku not being human, you don't really presume he's an alien because Toriyama's world is composed of anthropomorphic animals and, you know, several non-human entities, but him being an actual alien changed Dragon Ball forever, and Dragon Ball will never be seen the same way again if you look at it from that perspective. Now, fast forward to Dragon Ball Super episode 66. The issue with Trunks having so much power all of a sudden, I don't know if I would consider this a retcon, a retroactive continuity. It just seems like Trunks is being pushed to be a tremendously overpowered character literally out of nowhere. I think it's something that wasn't properly built up, and if it were to be explained later on, again, that's somewhat of a retcon. Doesn't bother me too much, but it kind of just came out of thin air that future Trunks all of a sudden has the ability to use all these techniques, including the Spirit Bomb, a move that he has never seen before. It's kind of weird to even think of that, and I may have a video dropping later this week where I analyze some theories about how Trunks may have learned this move. Also, the other big retcon is the fusion thing. Now, some people have told me that that's not a retcon. People who say that, I think, with all due respect, are confused between what a retcon and what a plot hole is. Yes, this is a retcon. In the original 42 volumes of the manga, and for the past freaking almost 30 years, 20 years, however long it's been, I'd say about 20 years, almost everybody I've talked to, no, scratch that. Everybody I've talked to has been under the impression that Potara fusion is permanent. Elder Kai said so in the series, and every W watch, Potara fusion is permanent. However, there are retcons / loopholes around this. Number one, when Vegito was absorbed inside of Majin Buu in the original manga, Goku stated, "Oh, it must be the atmosphere. That's why they defused." Fast forward to just last year, we saw Kaio, Shin, and Kibito defuse because of the Namekian Dragon Ball. So all of a sudden, it's not so permanent. Now we have yet a third layer of a retcon on top of that. Now we find out that mortals who use the Potara can only be fused for 1 hour. This is a brand new piece of lore that we have never even had hinted at us before. And once again, this is retroactive continuity. The established canon, the established continuity gave us one set of rules, and this retcon is changing the rules for story purposes. They're changing it so that they have a reason for Vegito to defuse during the fight, because Vegito was hammering on Merge Zamasu. In one of my Dragon Ball in-depth videos, I talked about understanding Toriyama, and I'm going to leave a link to that video in the description. But in that video, I talked about how Toriyama essentially writes these things by the seat of his pants, or at least he used to during the weekly manga era. We're not so sure exactly how he writes it now, but this kind of writing does fit in with classic Toriyama. It's not the best writing ever. It's filled with retcons, and it always has been, and thus complaining about retcons now is a little bit silly, even though I can understand why you would complain, because this past episode had about 3 or 4 inside of a 22-minute span. But it's not anything new to Dragon Ball, and Toriyama always has written like this. He never really evolved his writing, which again is both a good and a bad thing. You know, Toriyama's great when it comes to certain aspects of his writing, but in other aspects it can be pretty annoying, especially if you're looking for a logical, thorough story in Dragon Ball. You're not going to get that in the series. So that's all I got for you today. Thank you for watching the video and supporting Geekdom 101. And remember, yes, there was a lot of retcons. I understand being annoyed, and I certainly can understand why, because not all of us are little kids. A lot of us are grown-up people who love Dragon Ball, but retcons have always been there. Yes, they can be annoying, but understand the differences between a retcon and a plot hole. They're two different things. In the future, I may do a video highlighting more of the classic Dragon Ball retcons, because there's tons of them. There's literally tons of them. But you know what? Same thing with comics, Star Wars, and just about every piece of fiction that's ever come out. Thank you again. Make sure to press that subscribe button, because I got tons of videos dropping this week. It's going to be a crazy week when it comes to content here on Geekdom 101. Thank you as always for your support. It means a lot to me. You have no idea. Spread the word about the channel and check out some of the other videos if you're new to the channel. I've got damn near 900 videos, so there's no way you can be bored. I got videos on everything, so there you go. Anyways, talk to y'all later.